Sometimes the hardest part isn't that he's gone, it's that his memory still lives in places you can't seem to reach. You catch yourself replaying conversations, missing moments that don't even exist anymore, and wondering why it still hurts. But healing isn't about pretending it never happened. It's about deleting the emotional grip his memory has on you while keeping the wisdom it gave you. Because the truth is, he was a chapter, not the whole story, and now it's time to turn the page. You're not supposed to forget everything that happened. You're supposed to stop carrying it like it still belongs to you. When we talk about deleting his memory, we often think it means pretending the relationship never existed, like erasing photos, blocking numbers, or avoiding every song that reminds you of him. But that's not healing, that's hiding. True release isn't about pretending the past never touched you. It's about removing the weight of it from your present. It's understanding that what once was doesn't have to control what still is. When you hold on to his memory, you're not holding on to him. You're holding on to the emotions tied to him, the hope, the disappointment, the longing, the anger. It's not the events themselves that hurt. It's the stories you keep replaying about what those events meant. Every time you revisit a conversation, a text, or a moment that once made you feel alive, you're breathing life into something that's already over. You're giving your energy to a ghost. The truth is, your mind doesn't want to forget because forgetting feels like losing control. The pain becomes familiar, and in a strange way, comfort hides inside that familiarity. You might think that holding on keeps you connected to what was real, but it doesn't. It keeps you connected to what's over. And the longer you keep replaying the pain, the more you train your body to live in it. Healing happens the moment you decide that you don't owe the past another replay. Deleting his memory isn't about denial, it's about discipline. It's choosing to stop feeding thoughts that drain you. It's refusing to text just because you miss the version of yourself you were when you were with him. It's catching yourself when your mind starts wandering to what if, and gently saying, no, I'm not going back there. You're not trying to erase your history, you're simply reclaiming your peace. Because every time you let a memory run unchecked, it takes from the present. It steals your ability to feel what's real now. That laughter you could have shared with someone new, that focus you could have poured into your goals, that calm you could have built within yourself, all of it gets hijacked by a memory that doesn't deserve center stage anymore. You can't build a new life while you're still emotionally living in an old one. When you finally release the emotional weight of what happened, you make space for clarity. Suddenly, you can look at the same memory and see it differently, not through the lens of loss, but through the lens of learning. You can think of him without bitterness, you can remember without pain. That's the shift. Because healing isn't about forgetting what he did. It's about no longer letting it define how you feel about yourself. You start to realize that letting go doesn't mean you didn't love deeply. It means you love yourself enough now to stop suffering unnecessarily. The relationship served its purpose. It showed you what connection feels like, what red flags you ignored, what love should and shouldn't cost you. You don't need to hold onto the memory to prove it mattered. You already grew from it, and that's the point. So when you think about deleting his memory, think about it like cleaning your emotional hard drive. You're not deleting the files because they were worthless. You're deleting them because you've already saved the lesson. You've already downloaded what you needed. And now you're ready to make room for the next version of you. Lighter, freer, and no longer carrying the past as if it's still your home. The hardest part of healing is realizing that it wasn't always what happened that broke you. It was what you believed it meant. When someone walks away, we don't just lose them, we lose the meaning we attached to them. You didn't just miss his presence, you missed what his presence made you believe about yourself. You told yourself his attention meant you were special, his affection meant you were enough, and his silence meant you were unworthy. But the truth is, none of those meanings were facts. They were stories your heart created to make sense of something you didn't understand at the time. We attach meaning to people because we crave significance. We want to believe that the love we gave mattered, that the connection we felt was mutual, that the ending must reflect our value. But love isn't a math problem. His leaving doesn't mean you weren't enough, and his staying wouldn't have been proof that you were. It took you time to realize that you were never supposed to find your worth in his approval. It was always supposed to come from you. That's why the memory hurts so much, not because of him, but because of what you decided his actions said about you. When you start to look at those memories with emotional honesty instead of pain, something shifts. You stop asking, why did he do that? And start asking, why did I think that meant something about me? You start seeing how much of your suffering was tied to interpretation, not reality. Maybe he was distant, and you told yourself you were too much. Maybe he was inconsistent, and you told yourself you weren't worth consistency. But his behavior didn't define you, it revealed him. The lesson in all of this is that you get to choose new meaning now. You get to rewrite the story. Instead of saying, he left because I wasn't enough, you can say, he left because I was finally outgrowing what didn't align with me. Instead of saying, I lost him, you can say, I found me. Healing begins when you change the way you frame the memory, because the meaning you attach to pain decides whether it becomes trauma or transformation. You see, the brain doesn't heal by erasing memories, it heals by reframing them. When you can look back and say, that moment broke me open, but it also built me stronger. You take back your power, the memory loses its poison. You're no longer reacting from the same emotional wound. You're reflecting from a place of wisdom. That's how you keep the lesson and delete the pain. The moment you realize that you are the author of your own meaning, you stop letting other people hold the pen. You stop waiting for closure from someone who is never capable of giving it, because closure doesn't come when they apologize. It comes when you understand. It comes when you can look at the situation and see not just what it took from you, but what it gave you: awareness, boundaries, strength, clarity. So the next time his memory surfaces, ask yourself, what does this moment mean to me now? If it still means you were not enough, rewrite it. If it still means you lost love, redefine it. Because maybe what you actually lost wasn't love, it was attachment. And maybe what you gained was the courage to love yourself in a way he never could. In the end, you can't change the past, but you can change what it stands for. That's how you free yourself. The story doesn't end with heartbreak, it ends with ownership. You stop seeing him as the one who took something from you and start seeing yourself as the one who learned what you truly deserve. And that's the meaning that will finally set you free. One of the biggest traps after heartbreak is the way your mind starts to rewrite history. It takes pieces of the past, the laughter, the texts, the good days, and edits out the parts that hurt. Before you know it, you're not missing him, you're missing the version of him you created in your head. That's why it's so hard to move on, even when you know the relationship wasn't healthy. Because deep down, you're not mourning the person who left you. You're mourning the story you told yourself about who he was supposed to be. Memory has a funny way of romanticizing pain. It softens the sharp edges and amplifies the moments that once made you feel alive. You remember how he made you laugh, but not how he made you doubt yourself. You remember how he held you, but not how he withdrew when you needed him most. The mind loves to cling to comfort, even if that comfort comes from illusion. That's why healing can feel like betrayal, because part of you is still loyal to the fantasy. But the truth is, you can't heal from someone you're still idealizing. As long as you keep polishing the memory of who you wanted him to be, you'll keep overlooking who he actually was. You'll stay stuck chasing closure from a version of him that never existed. the real him didn't live up to your hopes. The real him didn't choose to meet you where you stood. The real him wasn't capable of giving you the love you imagined. Accepting that is painful, but it's also the key to freedom. You have to stop replaying the highlight reel and start remembering the full story. Not to hold onto anger, but to anchor yourself in truth. The person you built in your head, the one who understood you completely, who saw your worth, who would fight for you, that was your hope speaking, not his actions. And that's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to learn from, because it shows your capacity to love deeply, to believe in potential, to see beauty where others might only see flaws. But from now on, that kind of hope needs to be directed toward yourself, not someone who made you question your value. When you let go of the fantasy, you start to see things clearly. You stop justifying behavior that hurt you. You stop trying to decode mixed signals. You stop taking responsibility for someone else's inability to love you properly. The illusion begins to fade, and with it, your attachment to the pain, because pain loses its hold when you start seeing things for what they really were, not what you wished they could have been. There's a deep kind of peace that comes when you can look at a memory and say, that wasn't love. That was me trying to find love in someone who couldn't give it. That's not bitterness, that's clarity, and clarity is the foundation of healing. Once you stop romanticizing the version of him that never existed, you give yourself permission to grieve the truth, and the truth is far easier to move on from than the fantasy ever was. This is where your power comes back, because the moment you see that you were in love with an idea, not a reality, you stop feeling rejected. You stop wondering why you weren't enough. You realize it was never about being enough. It was about compatibility, honesty, and alignment. And when you release the illusion, you make room for someone real, someone whose actions match their words, whose love doesn't leave you guessing, whose energy feels safe, not uncertain. You don't owe the memory of who you thought he was another second of your time. You owe yourself the truth. Because the real healing doesn't come from holding onto what was beautiful. It comes from seeing what wasn't and choosing yourself anyway. When you stop romanticizing his potential and start honoring your reality, that's when you stop needing him and start becoming the person you always hoped he would be for you. There's something incredibly powerful that happens when you stop seeing a breakup as a loss and start seeing it as a graduation. Because that's what every goodbye really is. It's a moment where you move from one level of awareness to another. You didn't fail because it ended. You grew because it did. The relationship didn't collapse because you were unworthy. It ended because you reached the point where you could finally see what wasn't working anymore. Every time you try to hold on to something that no longer fits your growth, the universe finds a way to remove it, not to punish you, but to prepare you. When someone leaves, our first instinct is to interpret it as rejection. We ask ourselves what we did wrong, what we could have done differently, how we could have made them stay. But what if the ending wasn't about your mistakes? What if it was about your evolution? Sometimes the goodbye is life's way of saying, you've learned what you needed to learn here. It's time to move forward. That doesn't make the pain any less real, but it gives it purpose. Because once you understand that heartbreak is a teacher, not a verdict, you stop blaming yourself for the lesson. You see, every relationship you've had has been a classroom. Some taught you patience, some taught you self-worth. Some taught you what love feels like when it's safe, and others taught you what love feels like when it's conditional. And then there are the ones that break your heart open, the ones that show you your blind spots, your patterns, your emotional triggers. Those are the most painful, but they're also the most transformative, because they force you to confront parts of yourself you didn't know needed healing. So when you look back at the person who left, try not to see failure, see growth. You learned how to set boundaries even if you didn't at first. You learned how to listen to your intuition, even if you ignored it before. You learned that love should add to your peace, not take from it. That's what graduation looks like. It's not a celebration of perfection. It's a recognition of progress. It takes real strength to stop chasing the version of love that hurt you. It takes courage to stop trying to fix what was never meant to last. But that's what emotional maturity is, the ability to say, this chapter was important, but it's not my whole story. You're not walking away because you stopped caring. You're walking away because you finally care about yourself enough to leave what doesn't nurture your soul. That's not losing, that's winning differently. If you think about it, every graduation is bittersweet. You're proud of how far you've come, but you also know you can't go back to the same classroom anymore. That's what this moment is. You can still appreciate what you learned without wishing to relive it. You can still love who you were in that relationship without wanting to return to it. Growth doesn't mean erasing your past. It means honoring it for what it gave you and moving forward with what it taught you. So, instead of mourning what ended, celebrate what began within you because of it. Every tear you shed was a sign that your heart was expanding, not shrinking. Every sleepless night was proof that you cared deeply. Every time you got back up after breaking, you showed yourself your own resilience. That's what real strength looks like, not avoiding pain, but transforming through it. You didn't lose him. You outgrew the version of yourself that needed him. You didn't fail at love. You graduated into a new level of it, one that starts with you. The next time you look back, don't ask, why did it end? Ask, what did it teach me? Because once you do, you'll realize you didn't walk away empty. You walked away wiser. And wisdom, not attachment, is the real gift of every goodbye. When you've been hurt, it's easy to start carrying labels instead of lessons. You begin to define yourself by what happened. I was the one who was left. I was the one who loved more. I was the one who wasn't enough. But those labels aren't truth. They're scars written in emotion. They might describe how you felt in a moment, but they don't define who you are. Healing means separating your identity from your experience. It's realizing that pain may shape you, but it doesn't get to name you. After heartbreak, people often say things like, I'll never trust again, or I'm done with love. That's what happens when you keep the labels instead of the lessons. You close yourself off because the pain feels safer than vulnerability, but that's how you end up carrying emotional baggage into places where it doesn't belong. The lesson from heartbreak isn't to stop loving, it's to love smarter, to love from fullness, not fear. To protect your peace without hardening your heart. When you hold on to labels, you stay stuck in the story. When you hold on to lessons, you rise above it. The lesson might be that you ignored red flags because you wanted to believe the best in someone. It might be that you confused chemistry for compatibility. It might be that you gave too much too soon because you thought proving your love would make them stay. These realizations are painful, yes, but they're also gifts. Because they show you exactly where you need to grow, where your boundaries need strengthening, and where your self-worth needs reinforcing. That's what keeping the lesson means. It means taking the wisdom without keeping the wound open. When you release the labels, you start seeing yourself differently. You no longer say, he left me because I wasn't enough, but instead, he left because I finally stopped shrinking. You stop seeing your heartbreak as a punishment and start seeing it as a filter, one that removed what wasn't meant for the version of you that's rising. You're not broken because you got hurt. You're wiser because you learned how to feel deeply and still choose to heal. It's also important to understand that not every lesson is about what they did to you. Many are about what you allowed, what you ignored, what you accepted in the name of love. That's not self-blame, that's self-awareness. The lesson you keep is the one that helps you love yourself more deeply next time. The one that says, I will never abandon myself just to be chosen again. Because the truth is, heartbreak doesn't destroy you. It exposes you, it shows you where you still need to build trust with yourself. And when you truly integrate that lesson, you don't walk into your next relationship guarded, you walk in grounded. You no longer expect perfection, but you also no longer settle for confusion. You no longer overextend to earn love, but you give freely when it's reciprocated. You move differently, not because you're bitter, but because you're awake. That's the difference between someone who keeps the pain and someone who keeps the wisdom. Every person who has ever hurt you gave you data about what you value, what you need, what you should never compromise again. That's not something to resent, it's something to use. The real healing happens when you stop saying, "This happened to me," and start saying, "This happened for me." Because then you stop living as a victim of your past and start living as a student of your own evolution. You can't rewrite the story that broke you, but you can rewrite the meaning of it. You don't need to forget what he did. You just need to stop carrying it as proof that love is dangerous. Keep the wisdom that reminds you what respect feels like, what alignment looks like, and what your heart deserves. Leave the rest, because labels keep you stuck, but lessons set you free. And the most powerful thing you can do after heartbreak is stand tall and say, "I didn't lose love, I learned how to love myself better." Healing doesn't mean you forget. It means you remember differently. It means you can think of him without that familiar twist in your stomach or that rush of sadness that used to knock the breath out of you. True healing isn't about erasing him from your mind. It's about reclaiming the power his memory once had over you. It's when the memory stops being a trigger and becomes just a fact, something that happened, not something that still defines your peace. That's when you know you've finally healed, not when you stop remembering, but when remembering no longer hurts. At first, you'll catch yourself thinking about him without meaning to. A song plays, a scent passes, and suddenly, you're back in a moment you thought you buried. That's okay. Healing doesn't mean your heart becomes immune. It means it learns how to process. You can't force your mind to delete someone who was once deeply woven into your life. What you can do is train your heart to stop giving that memory the same emotional charge it once had. Every time you revisit the past, remind yourself, this is just a thought, not an invitation to reopen the wound. The power of a memory lies in how you interpret it. When you were hurting, every reminder of him felt like proof that you'd lost something irreplaceable. But once you heal, those same reminders become neutral. They stop being symbols of pain and start being symbols of growth. That's the beauty of healing. It changes the story. The memory that once broke you now becomes evidence of how far you've come. You can look at it and say, "That hurt me, but it also taught me what I deserve." That shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens every time you choose peace over nostalgia, clarity over chaos, and self-respect over longing. When you reach that stage, you stop running from the past. You no longer delete photos in anger or block memories out of fear. You can scroll by an old picture and feel gratitude instead of grief, because now you understand that keeping the memory doesn't mean you're still attached, it means you've made peace with it. The goal isn't to have no reaction, it's to have the right one, calm, acceptance, maybe even appreciation. Because even if it hurt, it shaped you. Healing also means reclaiming the energy that was once tied to him. For a long time, he lived rent-free in your mind, shaping your moods, influencing your choices, haunting your quiet moments. But now that same energy belongs to you. You no longer wake up wondering what he's doing or whether he's thinking of you. You wake up wondering how you can make today meaningful for you. The silence that once felt empty now feels peaceful. The space he left behind has become sacred ground where you're rebuilding your sense of self. You'll know you've reclaimed your power when his name no longer carries weight. When someone mentions him and you don't flinch, when you can tell the story without feeling it echo in your chest, that's not indifference, that's healing, because real freedom isn't pretending you don't care, it's realizing you don't need to. You've already done the work, you've already extracted the lesson. Now you can move forward without dragging the emotional residue of the past behind you. There will always be memories. You can't delete history, but you can decide how it lives within you. You can let it haunt you, or you can let it humble you. You can let it remind you of your pain, or you can let it remind you of your strength. Healing is choosing the latter every time, because the goal was never to erase him. It was to remember yourself again. The love you gave, the strength you found, the lesson you learned, those are yours to keep. The rest you can finally let go. Deleting his memory doesn't mean erasing your past. It means freeing your heart from the weight of it. You don't have to hate him, forget him, or rewrite what happened. You just have to stop carrying it. Because the truth is, he was never meant to stay. He was meant to shape you. The lesson was always yours to keep. And now that you've learned it, you can finally walk away lighter. Not bitter, not broken, just wiser, softer, and more at peace with yourself than ever before.